see what's out there.
Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield Presents Let's See What's Out There Plus, an entertainment video stream currently focused on Star Wars Ahsoka, which is available to watch on Disney Plus. My name's Keith Isles and I'm joined on this stream by
for fun and frolics with Graham Williams.
Good start, eh? Lord Graham.
Well, it was what I was called on the weekend. So, yeah, I'm carrying it on. So, some respect, please, young man.
There you go. And we are both film and TV enthusiasts. And in today's episode, we're going to have a spoiler-filled conversation around part 4, which is titled Fallen Jedi. So there's going to be spoilers for that and the previous 3 episodes and probably other areas of Star Wars canon as well. But there you go. Warnings away. Graham, yeah, I feel like there's a lot to dig into today, isn't there?
Yeah, an intriguing episode, most definitely. I've tried to put as much in the summary here. But I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on this because I've been on the internet a bit and this episode's really divided a lot of fans out there. Yeah, okay. So let's see if they're divided.
Okay. Well, I've tried to avoid that, but I've certainly got my own thoughts, which we'll get into. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. Thank you for stopping by. Apologies for the little bit of a messed up start. It's been a long day. Let's just put it that way. It's been a long day. I've been out on the road most of the day, sat in meetings. I just got a quick run in before this, but crazy stuff. So apologies. But if you are new here, welcome. Please do check out some of the other bits and pieces on this channel. Consider giving us one of those thumbs up likes, subscribing to the channel, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll get notified as and when content drops, because it can be a bit random sometimes. But we don't just look at Star Wars here. We look at other TV and movie properties and franchises as well. And also, as the name of this channel suggests, we do also look at physical media and home media technologies and things of that nature. So if film and television is your bag and you like this sort of thing, please check out some more of that. We have a little bit of a format on this show. So we do spoil the episode. As I said, we go through a brief summary of what happened this week. We look at some of the production credits in our Thank the Maker section. Then we have a bit of fun where we just look at some Easter eggs and connections to other areas of Star Wars. A little bit of speculation, but then the main part of the show is really our thoughts, and we can get quite geeky and nitpicky about such things. But presumably you wouldn't be tuned into a channel like this if you weren't into all that sort of thing. So Graham, Lord Graham, you may fire when ready.
Part 4, Fallen Jedi. While Huyang works to fix the downed ship in the forest of Cetos, Ahsoka mulls over a difficult choice. If they cannot make the journey to the other galaxy, then no one can. This obviously pains Sabine, as it means Ezra will be stranded forever. Ahsoka feels this and asks Sabine whether she can count on her, but more on that later. Lord Balin sends Shin, i.e. Emo Jedi, to slow down Ahsoka and Sabine so that, as we find out, Morgan Elsbeth and her droids can calculate accurate coordinates from the map but not be lost in the void. After a sneak attack and inevitable defeat of baddie attack droids, Ahsoka and Sabine are separated in the forest, and this against Huyang's uncharacteristically sage advice. Even though Marok and droids are killed, Ahsoka is left to fight both Balin and then Shin alone at the map site. What follows is another tense, epic battle of lightsabers and wills. With the lack of Sabine at her side, Ahsoka is finally vanquished by Lord Balin, Ahsoka plummets to the waters below the cliff. The map is not the only MacGuffin that is chased. Even though Sabine picks up the dislodged map from Ahsoka and Balin's battle, Balin appeals to Sabine's heart, and Ahsoka's earlier question is answered. Sabine gives the map to Lord Balin rather than destroy it, and her chance to rescue Ezra. Morgan and the droids are able to complete their calculations, yet Lord Balin is not all the baddie he appears to be, as he takes Sabine hostage rather than kill her there and then. We get the once a rebel, always a rebel act from Syndulla as she disobeys orders of the council, as shown last episode, and she is joined by her son along with a motley crew of X-Wing pilots who include in their numbers the now established Star Wars TV stalwart Carson Tavor. But they do not get the chance to come to the rescue. Syndulla and the X-Wings get smashed about or destroyed as the baddie's hyperdrive ring blasts off on its journey through hyperspace. The goodies are in a heck of a pickle now. But one more unpredictable plot twist remains for us this week. Ahsoka seems to be dead and in the world between worlds, where she is greeted by none other than her former master, Anakin Skywalker.
Yay. There you go. I feel that they crammed quite a bit into the fairly short running time of this episode, but in a good way. So splendid. All right, now it is time to thank the maker. Alrighty, so this episode, as all of them, I believe, is written by showrunner, executive producer, and creator David Filoni. So we've already talked a lot about him. But this week's episode, it was directed by Peter Ramsey. Now, we have talked about Peter before because he has directed episodes of The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett previously. So he is well stooped in the Star Wars universe, if you like. His background, though, was as a storyboard artist, where he worked for some years on a number of films for many directors, including Steven Spielberg and David Fincher and Robert Zemeckis, among others. But in terms of directing duties, has been involved since 2009, did a TV movie called Monsters vs. Alien, Mutant Pumpkins from Outer Space, and then Rise of the Guardians, and then one of mine and Graham's favourites, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and then has been involved in TV with We the People, Lost Ollie, which is a mini-series, and then, as I said, episodes of, or an episode, sorry, of The Mandalorian. And I was mistaken when I said Book of Boba Fett. He has not done a book episode of that, but this is his first, obviously, outing with Ahsoka. So good work there, Peter Ramsey. I like to talk about some of the other behind the scenes, above the line people, and I know we talked quite a bit in the first episode where we covered the first three about composer Kevin Kiner. So just to say a little bit more about Kevin and his work, as I said, a composer whose credits go back some way, obviously music department early on before becoming full-fledged composer. Looking at credits, they go back to the late 90s with television series like History's Mysteries, etc., and Walker, Texas Ranger, and UC Undercover. So did episodes of that for television. Straight to video, Tremors 3, Back to Perfection, On the Other Side of Heaven, The President's Man, A Line in the Sand, which is a TV movie. The TV series, The Invisible Man, that ran from 2000 to 2002, was the main composer on that. Also, composer on Stargate SG-1, for 18 episodes. So it's done quite a bit. Also, actually did a few episodes, 11 episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, which is a franchise we talk a lot about on this particular channel. So yeah, Jane Doe, The Bedford Diaries, What I Did for Love, Pandemic, Final Approach, which is a TV movie, Murder 101. And then we get into the Star Wars territory when in 2008, Kiner was the composer for Star Wars The Clone Wars, which was a theatrical movie that then led into the TV series, of which he obviously was a composer on that as well. Has also done some composing for Star Wars video games. We've got Star Wars The Clone Wars Lightsaber Duels and Star Wars The Clone Wars Jedi Alliance. And also Clone Wars Adventures, which is a video game. Also 007 Legends, composer there. Did some episodes of CSI Miami as the lead composer on that. Star Wars Rebels, which obviously has a massive connection to this. And has also done some work on Star Wars audio comics. So yeah, just literally hundreds and hundreds of credits. More recently, Star Wars The Bad Batch, Titans, and that's what brings us to Ahsoka. So yeah, good stuff. I know, Graham, you're a big fan of Kevin's music, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. Hadn't really looked into all his back catalogue, but yeah, that's impressive in the first place. But I'm genuinely loving the themes. You got the opening credits, opening titles, credits too at the end. We were talking before about how there's obviously Japanese influenced music, but then there's more of your kind of fantasy, kind of Lord of the Rings type orchestral music included. But then we do have the John Williams themes coming through. There's hints of them here and there, which really pull us right back into the Star Wars universe as well. And yeah, when this series finishes, we should have the soundtrack fully released. Hopefully it'll be before then. We've got another 4 weeks, 4 episodes to go. And it's definitely one I'm going to check out as a whole as well, because obviously we're distracted by what we're seeing other than just what we're hearing, right? So, yes. Yeah, me and my soundtracks for movies and TV. Some of the modern composers are my favorite composers of all time. Michael Giacchino being one example, but Kevin Kiner here is really up there, and this soundtrack so far is one that I think is adding not just gravitas but quality to this TV series. So regardless of what people think around writing or whatever, whatever differences people have, I don't think we can have much argument around the music.
No, absolutely. And I was literally just skimming there with credits. According to IMDb, if that's to be believed, he's got 140 composer credits to his name. So hell of a lot of work. Hell of a lot of work there. So that's good. Right then. Well, it's time to get that bantha out, get ourselves a drink, and have some bantha milk blue. Alrighty, so this is just a bit of fun. I always caveat this there are channels out there that specialize purely in Easter eggs from this. I know New Rock Stars, for example, which is a massive channel. They break these things into ridiculous granular detail, and I usually watch those after we've done these episodes, and then I'm always like, yeah, missed that. Damn, didn't spot that. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool. Didn't know that. and all of this. But this is just where we have a bit of fun with it. So, were there any particular ones that leapt out to you, Graham?
Yes, I'm gonna have to go back to my notes because you know me and my calendar memory. See, I nearly forgot what the actual kitchen implement was there.
Yeah, you're going to say a sieve.
A sieve. I could have done that, couldn't I? Right. So here we go. So it's not in the order of the episodes, it's in the order of my memory. So the line, "I've got a bad feeling," not quite the full Han Solo line there. So that's from Syndulla's son. So he says that as they're coming to Cetos. "I've got a bad feeling." Cool. That's in there. There was a beautiful, yes, CGI, but a beautiful shot of the New Republic fleet, which actually looked like the Rebel fleet from Return of the Jedi, with the main kind of mothership, if you like, around a planet. I just saw that was straight out from Jedi. Definitely, it just looked like that. So that was beautiful. Of course, then, we're in the Star Wars universe, so anything X-Wing, we're going to go, that's Easter eggs all the way through, but actually they're just a part of it, but brilliant to see them in this episode. So some, really nice shots there. I noticed maybe it's because, we binged watched 1 and 2 and then got into episode 3. But in this particular one, I noticed more of the swipes and scene transitions that we had with the original Star Wars trilogy. I just noticed them more here, unless they were more apparent, or again, because we were just watching so much content for the first 3 episodes. Here, I spotted them more there. So then, also mentioning Kevin Kiner's music, there were more. I heard some more John Williams themes in. So what I felt with this episode, I was pulled more into the Star Wars universe than I did from the other 3 episodes. So for me, they are Easter eggs. What I found, though, I'm not sure that you can argue Easter eggs here, but the fighting styles of Ahsoka especially was right from practically any of the classic Edo period samurai movies that we watched, like Kurosawa ones, or even Beat Takeshi's Toichi as well. There was I know that Jedi lightsaber fighting and the style is taken from that period, and samurai as well, but nothing so stylized as I've seen, apart from this episode in the Star Wars universe, yet has been so close to the katana wielding warriors from before. So really noticed them and got into them a lot more there. So as you know, Keith, if you remember, we've had our Jedi training a few years ago. We did at dusk. We did with our lightsabers pictures to prove that as well. A lot of fun there. So we got to know, the two-handed the katana. So how to wield the lightsaber. But so this was that pulled me back to that evening of education. Other than that, there could be a million and one things, but I didn't pick up on anything specifically.
Fair enough. Well, I'll have to try and dig out one of those photos. Actually, now you've reminded me of that. Yes. So okay. Well, I did throw a few things on a slide. So first of all, Ahsoka references. She said, when she's talking to Sabine. Sorry, I blanked then as well. My mind did the Civ Colander thing as well. Then, So when she was talking to Sabine about the, about bringing Ezra back, and she says, by doing so, you'll also bring back Grand Admiral Thrawn, and he will be the heir to the Empire, which is obviously a reference to the 1991 novel by Timothy Zahn of that name, which was the first novel that introduced Grand Admiral Thrawn as a character. So I thought that was quite a, obviously Easter eggs can be, as we've said, got a bad feeling about this, phrases of dialogue as well as, actual visual things as well. We also, of course, get poor Sun Hung Lee there back as Carson Teva, who was obviously established in The Mandalorian and appeared in several episodes of that, including an episode where he was in a bar with Zeb, who is one of the other characters, rebel characters, that made up the crew of the Ghost that we've seen in live action, but we haven't seen in this show yet. So that was good. Also in live action, we do see the Ghost, which is Sedula's ship. That was obviously the main ship carrying the rebels in that aforementioned series. It did also get its debut in live action as an Easter egg in Star Wars Rogue One, where it was part of the Scarif fleet in Star Wars Rogue One. But again, it features quite prominently in this episode, which is very cool. As part of what they were calling Phoenix Squadron there with the fighters, and we get the whole lock S foils in attack position and all of that sort of stuff. So any old school Star Wars fan would sort of love all that sort of thing. Couple of other things. Sorry, I haven't got a slide for this, but Marok the zombie, which does seem a little bit left field with Star Wars, but this was actually already established in the Clone Wars TV series, where the Night Sisters, of which Morgan Elspeth is one of them, have been using their magic to basically almost like sort of create zombies and bring dead Inquisitors back to, well, not back to life, but reanimate them so that they can fight, etc. And when you think, for those sort of saying, well, that's not George Lucas, that's not Star Wars, it kind of is, because obviously the Clone Wars was, even though Dave Filoni was on the show, but that was still very much run by George Lucas before the Disney acquisition. So the Clone Wars was very much signed off by him. So again, that does kind of still work within the universe, although obviously only people that are devotees, I guess, of the animated shows, the video games, and possibly some of the novels and stuff might actually be aware of that. It's certainly the first time I think we've seen it in live action, so that's cool. And then, of course, that brings us to something that is very much a Dave Filoni creation from Star Wars Rebels, which is the world between worlds, which is this kind of, in between life and death, and in between sort of time and space, if you like. Ahsoka has visited this realm before in Rebels. I think it was season 3, perhaps, with Ezra. There's a little shot of it there. Obviously, we're now seeing this in live action for the first time. Very interesting. Obviously, Star Wars itself has always been about, exotic aliens and interplanetary travel and, mystical force elements and things of that nature. But it's never really been about, time travel and parallel universes and things of that nature. And I guess this is sort of the closest that we get to that sort of thing in the Star Wars universe. But interesting that that's now done in live action. And of course, off the back of that, as we get to see Anakin, which a few things here. I mean, you mentioned about Kevin Kiner's music. I don't know whether you noticed, but as it faded out, we got a little bit of the Darth Vader theme just at the end there crept in. But this is kind of a big moment for Star Wars and live action Star Wars, because this is the first time that Ahsoka and Anakin have actually been together in live action. Prior to that, it was obviously in the Clone Wars, and I believe a Tales of the Jedi episode. But master and apprentice, a very developed relationship in the Clone Wars television series for sure. It's interesting. We've got a de-aged Hayden Christian there, looking like, having the look of Anakin Skywalker from the Clone Wars animation series there, which is interesting. And of course, this sort of ties in with the special editions of Star Wars, which is obviously now the canon, whereby one of the changes they made to Return of the Jedi was when you saw the Force ghosts at the end of Return of the Jedi, they replaced Sebastian Shaw with Hayden Christensen. So you had, instead of sort of 50-year-old Anakin Skywalker, you had, this version of Anakin Skywalker. And I think part of the reason they did that, I think Sebastian Shaw was actually older than Alec Guinness at the time they filmed that, which is obviously a disparity in terms of continuity and age and all of that sort of thing. So again, this, I guess, seeing Anakin like this kind of ties in with that as well, I guess. But I'm not an expert on it, certainly, but I did actually watch Rebels, so I am quite familiar with this world between worlds from the episodes there. And of course, he calls her Snips, which was obviously a nickname he gave to her right from the Clone Wars animated movie from the get-go. So yeah, I'm sure there are others, as I always caveat early on, but those were some of the ones that I managed to grab screenshots for.
Fair dues. Yeah. Again, a lot of Star Wars being pumped into this from a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
And now Uber creator in Dave Filoni.
Well, when you think about it, Dave Filoni, he's got an enviable position in the fact that he is he's an old school Star Wars fan, of our generation, that's been lucky enough to to have Star Wars not only be one of his passions and interests, but he was very much a Padawan under George Lucas for many years on the Clone Wars, and now he's got to actually be a filmmaker as well. So he's kind of living the dream, really. He's a filmmaker getting paid loads of money, no doubt, in the realm of Star Wars, which is one of his passions as well. So hats off. He likes wearing a hat, so hats off to him, right? So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, my hat's just been being flung so far away that's how much I revere the man.
But yeah, we'd all like to chip in, I'm sure, in an ideal world. But yeah, I'm loving this. I mean, we'll get into that. But before we do, it's time for Never Tell Me the Odds, or I've got a bad feeling about this. So, Graham, any speculation from you as to what we might see?
Yeah,
I mean, it could really go anywhere now, couldn't it?
Yeah, because as I said to my assembly, this is unpredictable. That's a good thing. Surprise us, But so I want to go back to the last time we talked. And I did say that it wouldn't be this episode that we'd see Thrawn. I think it's never we see Thrawn. Ezra, pretty much as well. We will. Mm-hmm. It's so difficult these days by being on the internet, even if you don't do the socials or don't look into anything pre-watching an episode of a movie, that there will be spoilers out there. So there were hints of Hayden Christensen, but this was a big surprise there. So last week I got one thing right, and that's a good thing for me. It's usually you and Pete Mealy on this channel who nail it, who get them right. So now that Ahsoka's in the World Between Worlds, that could knock one of my predictions as I was thinking about it during I was watching the episode with my daughter again this week, which was, I thought, actually, because now that hyperspace ring is blasted off, they don't have the coordinates now. The map has been destroyed by Lord Balin. Purrgil. I think Purrgil are going to be used as Ezra had by, it's called Rebels for now, to get to the other galaxy, because there's no other way that they go there without being lost in the void there. But this World Between Worlds, don't know, Keith. I have the speculation we had last week was Thrawn, Ezra, definitely going to see, not just yet. There is going to be a big ding dong battle, and it's probably going to be in this galaxy. They're going to be in the other galaxy for a bit, come back to this galaxy. The Council of the New Republic are finally going to wake up and go, right, damn, we need to do something. And that's as far as I go, because this episode, whilst it was a more of a stepping stone episode, it still crammed a lot more, but it took us off in another direction. So, yeah, I'd love to hear what you have.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, it could go anywhere really, but my only thing is I noticed that in those first few episodes, what Filoni obviously loves his characters and loves some of the stuff he's done in Rebels, and we had obviously the scene where Sabine and Ahsoka meet was sort of a recreation of a scene right at the end of the Rebels animated series, and we sort of broke it down last week and sort of showed the similarities between the scenes and then the slight differences in live action. And I'm just wondering, as they're going here and as it's sort of member berries for fans and all of this sort of stuff, we've got Hayden Christian. We saw in Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader. I'm just wondering whether we'll get some in the animated series. Ahsoka does fight Vader in the World Between Worlds. That's where it happens, and she is pulled out of it and basically saved by Ezra. Sorry, this is a spoiler, I guess, for Rebels, but I'm just wondering whether they may recreate that in live action, just because it would be something cool to do. No doubt Rosario Dawson, as a massive Star Wars fan herself, must be absolutely geeking out at getting to do these lightsaber duels, etc. She must be loving it. But I don't know. It's just a bit of a theory, but I wonder whether we might get some Darth Vader. And we might get some, bearing in mind that this could potentially jump around at different points in time that they've done things. We've obviously got Anakin there looking like he did in the Clone Wars when he was with, when he was the master and Ahsoka was his apprentice. Might we go to a part of that which we've got Darth Vader and Ahsoka fight? I don't know. It's just.
So you're saying that we could do with this World Between Worlds, go all crossover MCU with a multiverse?
Well, I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Because again, that's not really a Star Wars thing, no. But this is a Dave Filoni creation here, and it's I guess the closest thing you get. I mean, it's not exactly that. It's all to do with the Force, in Force ghosts and stuff, which has always been established, right from the original trilogy. So, Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I kind of like the not really knowing what's happening next. I mean, we're literally halfway through this series. We know from the trailer that Thrawn is going to appear at some point. Whether or not that's going to be a cliffhanger at the end of the season, or whether or not we're going to get full-fledged loads of action with him as of next week, who knows? I suspect that the entire of next week's episode will take place in the World Between Worlds. I think it's going to be a World Between Worlds episode, and by the end of it, Ahsoka will be essentially back to life, because of course Sabine, Bailiff, they all think that she's dead right now, right?
Exactly that. Yeah, she's taken hostage, and she is going to be in the other galaxy. So that's where, there's going to be a big reveal.
Yeah,
there is going to be, because it's the Ezra one that we don't really know about. Is he going to be in the series, or is he, rather than Thrawn, going to be the cliffhanger, or maybe at the end of episode 8? We're going for 8 episodes in this one, aren't we? So rather than 10. So there is that. But again, it has thrown out that surprise here. But I just think that the rebels, as we know them, are not going to give up. There is going to be a chase of some sort, because since part 1, the bad guys, they've always been a step ahead. As soon as they got the map, they've always just been ahead, and it's been more of a chase than just a journey and the heroes battling it out. So I think that will carry on as well, but there are going to be obvious twists with Sabine thrown into the mix now, her hunt for Ezra. That Filoni, as he tries to and does succeed, does push for the emotion. He pushed for emotion in this episode, didn't he?
Yeah.
There was a bit less action and a lot more psychology and emotion out in this one. So I'd expect a lot more on that. And, if you've got this, you've got a Grand Admiral Thrawn, and he's supposed to be super brain and a tactician. And as I've read a lot of Heir to the Empire, he really does. He is a intelligent but ruthless man. So those things I definitely will look forward to experiencing through this.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, as they've brought him into canon from Legends, they have very much kept the character, not just the look of the character, but also the traits of the character have been retained from Timothy Zahn's creation. So that's good. And Lucas was kind of on board with all this at the time as well, when those novels were written. Back in the dark days of Star Wars in the 90s, when books were all we had. Go figure. In this beautiful spoilt time that we have now. But listen, we're getting into viewpoints, so let's have a look at this from a certain point of view. Okay, so this is where we sort of dig into it and really talk about our thoughts and nitpicks. One thing I want to start with, Graham, was based on one of your comments there about how, and I don't disagree with you. You said about this is, quite an emotional, dealing with a lot of emotions of the characters and stuff, but less action. But I don't know. I kind of felt that this was a pretty action-packed episode at the same time.
Yeah, I'll qualify that with we had lightsaber scenes.
Yep.
And then we had
Ninja days.
Remember it has green and red lightsabers smashing against each other. Remember?
Oh, sorry, listen to South Park there. So they were tense and action, but I feel the more the weight or what I was feeling more in this episode was on the psychology more and the mood of it. It was a bit more ominous. So whilst you're right, there were action scenes here coming out of the episode and going back to the episode. It was more of them that that's where my memory goes to, and obviously I felt more and I enjoyed them more. And I can't believe I'm saying this, 40 years ago, 35 years ago, 30 years ago. I said, what do you mean? There's lightsabers. That's going to be the best thing ever about Star Wars. But actually, as a more mature man, that's why. So that's why I qualify that there was a lot more psychology and emotion here. But last week, and especially in comparison, there was there was a lot more action, if you like, rather than the more tense scenes, because even we had the spaceship fights, the dog fights, which were awesome. But this week, when you did have, especially the second lightsaber scene, for me that was less action because there was more of a battle of wills. It was really controlled.
Mm-hmm.
You had the MacGuffin, but you always had, me as an audience member as well. She was always going for the map. She was distracted by being alone and Sabine not around. So this one, so if you remember back to Star Wars, known as A New Hope, where Obi-Wan and Darth Vader battle, that's not an action sequence to me. That because there's a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of backstory there, but there's a lot of tension in that, and I found the same in this episode. Does that make sense? Where I'm coming from with the action part there. So totally. That's what I really got. It was that more that ominous feeling and kind of a half feeling that the bad guys are just going to win this one.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I have to say, personally, like, I was kind of on the fence about the first 2 or 3 episodes and said, I thought it was okay. And I'll be honest, I thought the space battle in part 3, most of it was good, but I thought the whole sort of space walk on the outside of the ship bit was a bit crappy because that didn't actually sort of make a lot of sense to me. But I have to say, in terms of just pure enjoyment, I've only watched this episode once so far, but this really, I thought this was a frigging great episode. I really had fun with it. It felt Star Wars. I guess it was just fun to see some cool lightsaber fights, and I felt that the fights in this were very well choreographed, and you had the different styles, as you mentioned, because the way Ahsoka was fighting, which by the way matched her style in the animated shows perfectly as well, but was very, she had that very sort of classic, as you said, almost sort of samurai type flair to it. Whereas Ray Stevenson, what's the character's name? Sorry, it's gone out of my head. Baylan, yes. He was kind of using his lightsaber almost like a broadsword. He was very much in control and all of this. And then you had
it, wasn't he? He really was just hacking.
Yes. Yeah. And then you had Sabine and what was it? Emo Padawan, as you call her. What's her name? What's her name?
Shin, as in
theirs was much more erratic because obviously Sabine is not as well trained.
She was all Mandalorian, didn't she?
I loved that because for a minute I thought, oh, are they going to do? Is she suddenly going to find the Force? You know, when she puts her hand up, she finally get, but she didn't. She went back to her Mandalorian ways and used her armor and rockets and all that, which were designed for fighting the Jedi. That was the whole point of the Mandalorians' gadgets and armor and all of this, and the Beskar and everything to deflect the blades. And she used that, and I thought that was brilliant. I mean, I love the way she starts by using the twin pistols, very much the same as Bo-Katan in The Mandalorian. Yeah, so she starts off with that before going over to the lightsaber. But then, as I said, she ends up using the wrist device and everything to get her out of a sticky situation. And yeah, I loved all of the fighting. I thought the fighting was, you know, that was the, you know, the 7-year-old boy in me came out when the fighting happened. I was kind of loving it, and I was actually thinking, oh my God, Rosario Dawson must be just, you know, died and gone to heaven, you know, because I know she's a big fan of, you know, growing up of this sort of stuff. And yeah, that was very cool. Very cool. And I have to say, Ray Stevenson, my God, he's so good in this. So unbelievably good.
Yeah, it was either being promised or threatened, whichever way you want to look at it, in the first 3 episodes with his character as well. Because I just think it's so nuanced. It's he is, you know, a fallen Jedi. He is not a Sith. He is a Jedi, and he is. I feel he's literally on the fence or balanced, because he's not gone over fully to the dark side. He's just a Jedi gone bad, right? But he's not on the dark side at all. So he has that, and he just aspires for more. So he's, you know, if you think of, you know, character studies, he is kind of the trickster. He's the one who could go either way. So he showed some goodness in him not to kill Sabine, but before then he had a goal, and just, you know, he defeated Ahsoka, and that was not on through the psychology he used on Sabine, but that was, you know, his will, and, you know, there was no kind of, I didn't feel any evil from him as a Sith Lord or a Sith would be there in a fight, but it was Ahsoka and her distraction over Sabine and being alone. I feel, you know, she showed the vulnerability of the Jedi, and she said it through dialogue as well as Ahsoka. The Jedi, you know, their ways, especially when she's talking to Hu Yang, their ways just didn't work. You know, they were wiped out. But I think that, yeah, Ray Stevenson's playing it really calmly. You know, the performance is almost slowed down. If you notice the pace of some of the dialogue and his performance, and even Emo, you know, Shin.
Yeah. But
they're
also
a lot calmer as well, and I'm finding that really intriguing, because we've never had this type of delivery and these types of characters here in Star Wars before.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the nuance, you know, much as having, you know, orange instead of red lightsabers. Yeah, that the nuance between these guys as sort of, if you like, dark Jedi and Sith, which is because, you know, Balin still acts like a Jedi in so much as he keeps his word. You know, he tells Sabine that he won't, you know, that he won't kill her if she, you know, gives the map over and all of this sort of thing, and he absolutely 100% keeps his word. Whereas if it was a Sith, she'd have been like struck down, right? So,
exactly.
So I'm loving all of that stuff for sure. Really loving that. One of the things that I've noticed, because like I said, after we do these streams, then I go and watch everything. So, you know, like I said, I watch things and say, oh yeah, missed that Easter egg. But I watched a lot of reviews as well and read a lot of reviews. And one of the points I think a lot of people are missing when I hear them talk about Ahsoka and Sabine and Sedula and all of this, that they sort of speak as if they keep saying, oh, but you know, they've got different actors doing these to the voice actors, but they're also not playing them like their characters from the animated shows, right? But I think the point that people are missing is, in the case of Sabine and Sedula and all of this, this is about 10 years on from Rebels. So they're you know, they were teenagers in Rebels. Now they're in their late 20s, early 30s. Yeah, so time has moved on. And from Ahsoka's point of view, this is nearly 30 years on from the Clone Wars. So, you know, they've matured. They're different characters, you know, and so I think Rosario Dawson is playing this right. It's very different to how Ashley Erskine did it in the animated show. But as I said,
I agree.
That was she was a child. Yeah, she was like what, 15 or 16 or whatever she's supposed to be in that series, right? As opposed to, well, close to 50 now, I guess, in Star Wars years. Yeah. And so you know, when people say, oh, it's not exactly the same, I think first of all, they've done good live action looking versions, because the animated show was always stylized anyway, and that was always Lucas's whole point with that, is he said it needed to be stylized because if it was completely photorealistic, they may as well film it live action. He wanted it stylized for animation. So they've done a good job of taking those characters, a bit like they did with the, you know, with Anakin and Obi-Wan. They took the live action characters and stylized them into the Clone Wars versions. And with this, they've taken the Rebel animated characters and created them into sort of believable live action versions. So I personally think that they've really nailed it. But as I said, I've heard a lot of complaints about how, you know, these actors are not playing the roles the same as they were by other actors in the animated show. But as I said, I think enough time has moved on that it still makes sense in terms of continuity, which, you know, I'm obsessed by.
You are continuity king. We know that. No, I agree. Yeah. So, yeah, I haven't felt that. But then again, it's half and half for me, because watch the Clone Wars. I haven't watched, apart from the first, what did I say, 2-3 episodes of Rebels. So Rebels is a clean slate for me. So a lot of what we talk about is education for me. But I'm coming in far fresher, which is where, again, I said last week that Dave Filoni's got, you know, he has to walk a tightrope here, because, you know, there's a lot of fans watching this, so you can have a bit of fan service.
Yeah,
but also you've got to look at us who haven't seen.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, actually, because as I said, I know I'm not versed in everything Star Wars. I haven't like read all of the novels and comics and played the video games and all of this, but I did watch the was it 3 or 4? I think it was four seasons of Rebels, and I really enjoyed those. Seen most of the Clone Wars, but not all of it. But this is very much a sequel to Rebels, very much. So I'm intrigued from your point of view as someone who hasn't watched those. Do you feel lost and left behind by this, or does it make sense? Like the World Between Worlds, for example, that's kind of, you know, that's kind of a big swing, isn't it, for Star Wars?
That was a big surprise to me.
Yeah,
and it was only because I was researching for the summary of this episode here, and it popped up, and it sounded poetic. So I went, what is that? Clicked on it, and it gave me a nice. And I went, okay, I know what that word is now because it was giving me spoilers. So I stopped. Spoilers meaning, you know, Rebel stuff and potentially something for the future here in Ahsoka. So to answer your question, it's definitely the latter. As I mentioned last week as well, Dave Filoni has continued with his writing into Part 4 with explaining, with, you know, exposition and explaining what is going on. So I do not feel left out. Take Ezra as a point. We have not seen the character of Ezra apart from a hollow message from Part 1.
Yeah.
So I know who Ezra is because, you know, I watched him the first few episodes, and of course, you know, there's a lot of merch out there as well. Okay, but apart from that, if we were watching this absolutely clear, we didn't know, like we had, let's say, with A New Hope, there were mention of Clone Wars, there were mention of a Darth Vader, there was mention of this and the other. There's so much mentions, but it fitted perfectly into the story because you had that backstory, you had all that history, all those ghosts, you know, in there, in the storytelling goes as well, you know, things that have haunted current characters, right? So I'm getting the same here. So I think Dave Filoni is doing a great job of keeping us who are not familiar with Rebels up to speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. No,
there was the only thing I found with this, and it's not nitpick. It was just that because again I watched it with my daughter, and she absolutely is loving it. She is getting a lot more out of this, even though I really enjoyed the episode and I'm enjoying the series as well. But the only humour we're getting really is from Hu Yang, who's the David Tennant voiced droid, and we actually got to see him fighting as well, which I thought was brilliant. I've seen some real dissent on in dispatches online. Some people going, "No, it was a bit silly," but actually, no, I don't know what I thought.
Yeah,
you know,
I have to say,
what's he going to do? Just sit around and be We're going to get C3PO 2.0? No, let's have a different type of droid. Let's have a droid that's been around Jedi. Let's have a droid actually it's been around. If he is training Jedi, he can fight too. So I was that was pleasing there. You know, we had a few more droids as well. You know, I mentioned you know, the singing act of, you know, Morgan Elspeth and the droids. I'm sure that they'll release a record soon anyway, you know, with their calculations and all the rest of it. So there's some really cool Star Wars non-Jedi aspects happening in this. So there's a lot rammed into this episode, which this one is I'll definitely go back and rewatch all over again.
Yeah, I mean it's funny. Hu Yang isn't quite landing for me yet, but I think it's quite a difficult job because obviously you've got, you know, C3PO, everyone will always compare to, but you also had K2SO from Rogue One, that again was it was a more of a snarky type of droid, different personality. And this is what Tennant is doing is kind of, this one falls a little bit in between the two. So it's a little bit of C3PO, but with a bit of K2SO snarkiness in there as well. And it's a tricky one. I think that's a tricky one.
I'm going to tell you something though that I noticed again, and it's been one of those kind of funny things I've always noticed with Star Wars, but in this one it was a lot more. Is, if I'm honest, you know, if I would not be either an engineer or a mechanic in the Star Wars universe, because all you're doing is avoiding sparks. Every ship that you work on that's got a little bit of problem, it's got sparks and wires and stuff that would actually kill you or just fry your face off. And what do we have here? A shit ton of sparks, and I'm going to rip this bit off here. I'm going to plug it into there. I mean,
it did remind me of when they were repairing the Millennium Falcon in Empire Strikes Back. Actually, that's another kind of slight reference. Is I did feel it had a tad of that when they were in the asteroid field and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's fair to say. I'll admit, I've been quite hard on Star Wars recently. New Star Wars, the shows that we've had. I haven't been, I've given them quite a tough time when I've reviewed them, because I haven't thought a lot of them have been up to scratch really, and I've always tried to sort of find the good in them, but they've been very flawed, very flawed. This episode for me is the best Star Wars episode I've seen since Andor. This is the best for me because I'm sorry, but for me, season 3 of Mandalorian was quite poor. It didn't really land for me at all, and I just thought this was way more like it today, or this episode. I thought that was way more like it, and yeah, I just hope they don't do anything, silly in the coming episodes. I hopefully they won't be smuggling anyone under their capes or anything like that.
Yeah, no, you're right. From before, we could go anywhere here. There is a danger that it goes a bit silly, but I have been keeping up the news to know whether this leads into an Ahsoka 2, or there's some Boba Fett to come back, or Mandalorian either. So I don't know what the roadmap is for Star Wars.
Either. I mean, it's supposed to eventually lead to a Dave Filoni film, in the Mandoverse, as they're calling it, in this time frame. That's that. But then again, because of obviously all the strikes and everything going on at the moment, everything's kind of on hold and being, release dates and times are being shifted all over the place. So who knows?
Go back and watch Rebels.
yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? I mean, Rebels is something I had a reasonably good time with. I heard a criticism of Rebels, which I do take on board. I can't remember which channel said it. It might have been Ryan Airy at Screen Crush, who, by the way, was on one of our shows once, but we had terrible technical difficulties, and I haven't been able to get him back since. But yeah, I think he said it in so much as his problem with Rebels was the whole thing about A New Hope and Luke Skywalker in Star Wars was, the Jedis had been pretty much wiped out for 20 years, and there hadn't really been anyone that strong with the Force and all of this, and Luke was the New Hope, the son of Skywalker, blah blah blah, all of that stuff. Whereas he says he felt that Rebels, which takes place 5 years leading up to A New Hope, so in other words, the same time frame as Andor, the fact that you had Kanan, who was a Jedi master, and he trained Ezra, who was very strong in the Force, and all of this sort of thing, kind of took away how special Luke was, and that sort of thing. And I get the point. I can see why someone would say that, but it's like anything, isn't it? The more you dilute the universe with, filling in the gaps and having more characters and more stories, that the more that's going to happen, isn't it? We talk about it all the time with Star Trek, and how they're trying to literally squeeze every single month between the everything we've seen, and an explanation for absolutely everything, and yeah, it does all get a bit diluted after a while, but then again, I do feel that we are quite privileged. I remember, because old, but being back in the 90s, and Heir to the Empire was, and that trilogy of Timothy Zahn novels were amazing, because it was the first time to get new Star Wars, since Return of the Jedi had finished, and the only way you could do it was to, rewatch the films on video, or listen to the audio dramas, which I did loads of, or read those novels, because there was nothing else. And and now is me saying, the quality of some of this Star Wars stuff is crap. We're lucky to have it all. We've got so much choice now. We've got live action shows, animated shows. We've got new novels, comic books, video games, merchandise. I mean, like I always say with Star Trek, is you can pick and choose what is your head canon, because there is so much of it there now. And yes, I want the quality of all this stuff to be good, of course, but it is pretty cool that we've got lightsaber battles happening on our screens at home.
Yeah, we're having new ones rather than just the old ones that we could practically practice blindfolded, couldn't we? Yet to have more of that is awesome, and to see more X-wings the same. So no, I totally agree. We are spoiled for choice, and it's good to learn these things. But we always now do want more because we've been given more. And you're right. It's a fair point on with the writer strikes and the actor strikes now as well, which I totally agree with too. They have not been paid or treated well enough, and support the strikes there.
Oh yeah,
totally. It does slow things down, but it does mean that again there is so much content out there that we can always revisit and re-enjoy, right?
Yeah, it's going to be like the new COVID almost. It's going to, production is halted, and so there's going to be a gap for the second time now in history. There's going to be that gap, and it will have a knock-on effect, and things will come later. Shows that are movies that are planned will end up getting released later and things of that nature. But hopefully things can get resolved, and I think let's as we were doing there, end on a reasonably positive note that we are still getting some good Star Wars from time to time.
Nice.
Cool. All right. Nothing else to add then, Graham? No?
Not this week.
Okay, well, let's use the comm link. Alrighty, so if you want to get in, thank you if you've lasted this long. We really appreciate it. Please, as I said, do consider liking, subscribing, comment below if you've got anything you wish to say about any of this, or feedback is relevant. If you want to get in touch with us, you can either put comments in the comments section below, or you can email us at lswotcast@gmail.com. That's basically short for Let's See What's Out There podcast. You can find us on the socials at LSWOTcast as well as this channel, Home Media Minefield, where you are now. Please check out some of the other content. As I said, we've covered The Mandalorian, we've covered some of the Star Trek shows, all sorts of things on here. Also want to give a shout out to Neil Myers, who does our theme music for this. Neil's work can be found at neilmyersmusic.com. You can also find my more creative work on another YouTube channel called British Isles. That's EYLES, as in my last name. And there's some short films that I've made there. There is also other Star Wars content on this channel. Probably my most popular video is one looking at the original trilogy on DVD. The original versions are still available out there. So check that out to find out what the difference is and all that sort of thing is. I go into it in quite some detail. And talking about quite some detail, I'm also joined by writers of the book on the Star Wars radio dramas. We have a real deep dive session into the radio dramas in full detail. So please check that out as well. So that just leaves me to say thank you, Graham, for for joining me on this and adding more content to it. I really appreciate input as always. And thank you for watching. And we will see you next time on
Let's See What's Out There.
Bye for now.